我们是从2014年开始成立的公司，当时我们是从建筑开始做起，从我们13个 unit 在 Picus 的，然后到2015年我们开始做我们的 project management， 主要就是做一些 DA 的批复以及一些 construction construction 的一些批准，然后接着在2017年我们开始去承建别人的项目，就是不是只是我们自己，然后再到2018年我们成立我们自己的销售公司以及我们的租赁管理，然后再到我们2021年我们成立了我们自己的基金公司。Matthew 呢是2021年跟我一起开始就是成立我们这个新的基金公司的。小梅姐呢是我们Sabrina 介绍给我关于我们这一次宣讲关于这个 childcare 的牵头人。那么呢，刚才我们也听了他给我们这个介绍，所以我觉得可能大家也是在做投资之前，可能你们也是要好好的思考自己的这个架构通过了解税务来选择自己正确的投资架构，然后去做正确的投资。所以从我们基金的角度，我们也是讲求相同的这个思路。所以呢，我大概介绍一下我们公司先等一下我们再说到项目。这个是我们公司从开始成立的时候开始做的一些项目，我大概流水的给每个人看一下从我们开始的时候，我们是做apartment，然后再到我们去做一些项目管理，做的一些 DA， 然后以及我们在2019年建成的一些房子在 RIDE， 然后再到我们接别人的项目去做的一些承建，然后这个是我们在今年预计在下个月将要结束的一个项目在 Epping， 然后还有我们去做的 planning proposal 在 Rhodes， 以及 DA approved 在 Haymarket。这个是我们早年做的一些house 以及 townhouse， 有在 Mosman 的 Putney 的，然后 Bow 的一些 townhouse 的项目。这个是我们在 Blakers 做的一个豪宅。从2021年我们做基金开始，我们做了一些 holiday house 的一些项目。这个是去年开始我们在蓝山以及我们在卡亚马做的一些 holiday house。因为 COVID 的原因，我们觉得就是人的思想是有一些变化的，不是仅仅是投资然后赚钱，然后可能还会有更多的一些就是财富自由的一些追求。因为有的时候大家有财富，但是未必懂得去要追求自由。所以我们在2021年的时候，我们就去投了一些像这样海边豪宅或者是山里的一些项目。然后我们的主要的目的还是有这个关于投资的回报。所以这是主要是关于 Forte 的一些我们的一些服务的项目。就是从2021年开始，我们开始有基金投资从2015年开始，我们有项目管理以及我们之前做的承建，包括一些地产的一些销售和管理。那从2021年开始，因为我们涉及到了更多的基金方面的内容，所以我们就更加开拓的去寻找一些更好投资回报的项目。关于就是说报税，我们也是有一些观点的，就是有的时候我们觉得好像报税不是一件特别好的事情，但是如果能够产生正的现金流的投资，其实我觉得每个人应该是比较 happy 去做的。所以我们从2021年开始涉及到 fund management， 对于我们而言呢，也是一个更全面的去看待这个市场，以及更全面的去选择一些投资的项目。那从我们专业的角度去选择一些值得投的东西。I get Matthew first talking about the fund management, then I come back regarding the childcare investment. So Matthew.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's interesting coming together with different cultures and having to learn different languages, and I have this in my everyday life through different nationalities. But I've been with Belinda for about 3 years. Maybe 18 months officially and 3 years of talking and watching each other. I think one of the wonderful things about the Forte group is that it's what I would call a completely vertically integrated business. So it does everything from building, design, construction, management, generating revenue for clients, and it allows Belinda and her team to control costs and provide a superior product. So when I came on board about 18 months ago to assist her in developing the funds management model, I was quite comfortable in the fact that she could manage every aspect of investors' money, could manage every aspect of the tax treatment of deals, and actually understood the numbers. And the numbers are the hard bit in today. Rising construction costs, changing interest rates, demographic movements, and I think Forte have done a wonderful job in finding their position. Maybe, you know, the next Mirvac, who knows? Okay. To talk more about the funds management, I'm in funds management. I run a portfolio of about $500 million of commercial assets in Australia, and I've been working with Belinda in setting up her funds management business, of which we have now raised 2 funds, I think. Is that right, Belinda? We're fully invested, development's underway. Sorry, Sabrina. Funds management's an interesting one because it actually relies on people to be a little bit trusting. They're investing in a piece of real estate. They're not investing solely. They don't have the sole decision-making process. They've got to trust the manager is acting on their behalf. And if I'm one of the responsible managers, which is a unique way that the Australian Investment Security Commission charges with, is to be responsible for the protection of your investment. Sometimes that could create an argument with the fund manager, but my job is to protect your investment. As you can see from what we do outside of the Forte Group, I run a small portfolio across Sydney and Melbourne. I've got 30 years in the business, developing residential, developing industrial, owning, selling, buying, in every state of Australia. So talking a little bit about Forte Funds Management, we recently changed the name to Australian Capital Investment Management as the manager of the fund. Now, if you were to invest into one of the funds, we'll slowly talk about, that is the entity of which I'm part of and which is there to protect your investment under our Australian Financial Services Licence. We then have 2 funds. We have the Forte High Growth Property Fund and we have the Forte Income Fund. One is closed-ended and one is open-ended. And by definition, a closed-ended fund means there is a term certain, or the fund, the umbrella fund can remain open, but the projects that you would invest in directly at your discretion are for a defined period, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. The Forte Income Fund is an open-ended fund which is a recurrent stream of income. So if you were to invest in that fund, you would be expecting to generate income returns of between 7 and 9%. Both have different tax treatments available. Vera will be able to assist you on that one. The High Growth Fund is more a capital return, different structure. The Income Fund is more an income return, again would be a slightly different structure. Do you want me to keep talking through? Sure. So right now, in the last 18 months, Belinda has been very active and she's established 2 investment products. First is the Forte High Growth Property Fund. We're targeting 15 to 25% internal rate of return, or in layman terms, 15 to 25% a year in the fund. We have currently 3 projects at the moment within this fund, and if you invested in the High Growth Property Fund, you actually can determine whether you wanted to invest hypothetically, if they were available, in the Miranda Townhouse project, the Kiama Holiday Home Lending project, or the most recent one, the Burwood Apartment project. And you can decide that what exposure you want. You might want exposure across all 3. You might be happy with exposure across 1. But as with anything, with a slightly higher growth element, there's also a slightly higher risk element. In saying that, mitigated by, again, the vertical integration of the business from construction management, design management, managing the DA process, managing the sales process, managing the financials with the banks, etc. That just gives you a bit of an example of what we're building at the moment in Miranda. Again, we settled this in, we issued the fund in May last year, literally a month after we obtained our Australian Financial Services Licence. The land settled in August. Construction is well underway and will be finished in about 6 or 7 months. 6 townhouses, sort of circa $2.5 million a townhouse in Miranda. Great location. And for all intents and purposes, the investors who have already invested in that fund will achieve at least a minimum 20% IRR. Just to give you, some of the internal renders. So you can see it's a site right now. It's building. Basement's built. They're forming up the formwork to go up to level 1, and it's a pretty quick rise once it gets to the ground floor. Kiama, again, that was acquired or identified by Belinda in October 21. The rationale behind Kiama, it's an hour and a bit from Sydney, on the coast. It's been pretty underdeveloped, and there's a progressive government in place now that's looking to regentrify the area. Belinda and her group have been early adopters. They actually own a house just up the road, which they bought as a test case maybe 12 months ago. And I think on short-term lets, it's probably returning about 30% per annum, which is substantially higher than maybe the 3% you would receive if you had a fixed rental in an apartment building. As you can see the location, it's quite wonderful. This is the proposed development. They're looking at building there. It's kind of built into 3 pavilions. It's 4 properties that will be short-term let properties, each with its own pool. It's going to be quite amazing. Again, it'll generate that sort of high-end hotel style return. And then finally, in this instance with Burwood, which is the most recent transaction, amazing location. It was just acquired in April, and revised or Section 455 certificate for an amendment to the DA was applied for will be applied for next week, actually July next week, and it's going to be a 12 to 14 month build. 43 apartments, sort of circa 60 square metres to 105 square metres apartment. Average price would be about 1.3 million at the end of the day. Proximity, as you can see, Burwood train station, the Chinatown of Burwood, in close proximity, amenity. It's a highly sought after area. The Forte Income Fund, as I mentioned, the nuances between the two. One is a capital return, the other is an income. This is a slightly more passive fund, seeking a 7 to 9% income on your investment with quarterly distributions. While it's open-ended, there are the ability to redeem after 24 months, I think, or 3 years, and in part or in all, depending if your circumstances change. It's an ongoing investment, so you can continually invest into it. The strategy is pretty simple, where the difference between the high growth fund and the income fund as well is, one, the high growth fund is direct equity investment, so you are taking the rise and fall in capital values, and you're taking the risk as you would if you bought your own investment apartment. The income fund is specifically targeting to invest in debt as an instrument. Therefore, there's an equity buffer below you to protect your investment. So this is more about capital preservation and providing you with an income return that's maybe above what you can get in other sort of low risk type asset classes. We aim to keep about 10% in cash from a liquidity perspective, and the percentage between second ranking preferred equity and first ranking debt, we're aimed, that's our target of 40, 30 and 20. However, that may move up or down slightly depending on the transaction at the time. Each transaction that is entered into has an independent investment committee, of which Belinda and I both sit on, and that will determine any investment we go into. So there's a good level of governance sitting within the fund itself. So from a risk perspective in the income fund, as I mentioned, we have an independent investment committee. There are 3 of us sitting on that. Belinda is I suppose, the non-independent. There are two other independents. We have a governance procedure in place and a set of principles which we follow to approve any deal. We're ranking above equity, so there's an equity buffer of a minimum percentage from a development or an income perspective, which could be anywhere from 20 to 50%. We're only investing in safe assets, okay, is what, and I think Belinda will talk about the childcare opportunity in the future, but for me, that's a safe asset, okay. Childcare in Australia, essential service, social infrastructure. As Adrian mentioned, there's only one. There's like we're 2/3 under resourced for childcare in Australia. It has to grow. The cost of working, the cost of employment, the cost of living in Australia really requires to remain both households at work. So it's a very safe, secure kind of asset class. One of the ones that we are clearly focused on. And thirdly, we will diversify. So it will be in alternative assets. It will be in some development that is protected through an equity buffer. It will be in hospitality, health, industrial, commercial, depending on the transactions at the time. But in the main, the focus from a geographical spread is really going to be New South Wales. It's our background, it's what we know, and better to work in the areas that we know. So as you can see, that's where we're sitting. As I mentioned, there's always an equity buffer below us, and we're either going to sit as a first ranking mortgage, just like a bank, like the Commonwealth Bank or Westpac, or we're going to be sitting as a second ranking debt or preferred equity, interchangeable depending on the structure at the time. Again, as I mentioned, we're diversifying under this. We do feel that accommodation is a great inflation hedge for us at the moment, because you can actually re-rate you can actually change your rates daily or weekly versus being stuck in, they say, a 6 or 12 month standard residential lease. We like the development side. All the investors that I'm dealing with, and I've got a number of investors from Hong Kong and Singapore that we're speaking to at the moment who are injecting money into Australia, are all talking about value add development, upgrade, reposition, find a new way to value it, increase the income flow to counteract changing of interest rates and management of inflation. And as I've already spoken about childcare, it's a pretty simple one, like it's needed. This is why we're investing in childcare. I think it was Adrian mentioned it. I'll re-mention it. I mean, the potential is huge. It's underdeveloped. There are not that many great childcare operators in Australia, and anyone who's not a bit like Oz Education, that top sort of 3 or 4, they're all it's a very cottage industry style business. So you are looking for those occupiers or tenants to be that top 3 or 4 in their industry group, or looking to amalgamate and grow a larger balance sheet. As it is, it's a fairly expensive platform. The cost of educating teachers, the cost of regulations in the childcare industry, and the number of teachers or childcare workers per student number is growing by the day. But it is an essential service, and sites aren't that easy to get. So when you get them, you hold them. They're 20-year, 25-year leases. And you've got a business which has got it would have to lose all its clients or its parents to go out the back door. So it's got this great diversification where people will always need it if they provide the quality service. It's underwritten by the government. What could be better than having the Australian government underwriting your income in part or in whole? And that provides that blue chip guaranteed fee revenue for the business. Disposable income, we've all read about it, it's rising. In the main, you're seeing 5, 7, 10, 15% pay rises to people. Unfortunately, on the flip side, you're seeing increased cost of living, so it's offsetting a bit. But what you're doing is you're seeing more and more of the need for two parents to be back at work. And the work from home experiment, while wonderful for some, is not so wonderful for others. And we are seeing return of the workforce back into the cities, into the major regional areas, and we are seeing more and more parents needing to be back out of their house again. I need your fingerprint. Women are back at work, right? We're all about equality, and which is fantastic, and we're seeing that women in the workforce are now sitting at about 50%, and that means someone's got to be either be at home or their child's got to be looked after. And with more women in the workforce, we're getting more diversification. It's a strong growth driver, especially by the Albanese government, especially by the Forte government in New South Wales. And we keep making more kids, so we need more places. Did you want me to talk about this, or do you want to talk about the...
You can go ahead, but I will speak in Chinese.
You're speaking Chinese? Good. My Chinese is a bit rusty. So this is from what I understand, this is the first asset we're doing in partnership with Oz Education, is a new facility in Wyong. Wyong's on the north or the central coast of New South Wales. One of the fastest growing areas in New South Wales, and as a result, young families are moving there. It's affordable, but they have to work. And a lot of the workers there are still coming into the city or into parts of Sydney to work. They've got to be near a station. They need to be an ability to drop their kids off. So this is the first one that I understand we're involved in. We settled the land in the last few weeks. We've got a DA going in now, or has just gone in. It's a relatively simple development approval application, I should say, that it's akin to getting a development application for a house. But I mean, there are many more things at play here about access, security, etc., ability, transportation or traffic management, etc. But we feel it's a fairly simple kind of product, and it's a needed product. The housing estates, the land releases in this area have been huge, and the migration here over the last, even predominantly through the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, it was starting to increase. So it's one of the, if not the fastest growth area in Sydney, it's one of the fastest growth areas in Sydney. And we expect it to be, pretty much a 12-month build. And I'm sure Adrian will be pretty keen to, to find 63 children, I think, so number is for this centre, beginning the first quarter of 2024. Oh, I've lost you.
How big is the land? It's about 1,700 square meters.
That's up to you. That's out of my skill set. I'll hand it back over to Belinda. Thank you very much.
我们是这样，我大概说一下我们选择这个产品的想法啊，因为我们是做投资的话，那我们可能从回报的角度来说比较重要一点。我们是希望找到很好回报的投资的项目。那比较在悉尼就是我们的这个Great Sydney Area 呢，很多的资产的价值在最近一年，包括因为 inflation 和 COVID 已经是变得非常的高了。那我们在做我们的评估的时候，我们综合考虑几点因素。第一点因素，我们考虑就是说这个地区，首先它是不是一个需求很大的地方。那么考虑比较多的呢，就是说从我们正常做开发的角度，它可能考虑会比较不一样。因为我们发现有一些区域，特别是不太工作的人，反而孩子会特别的多。所以我们在挑选的时候，我们会跟 Aussie 先了解一下他们的 expansion strategy， 就是说他们想要在哪些地方去开设他们的幼儿园。 其次呢，我们会做一些我们自己的尽调，就是当地的这个需求以及人口的增长。那么我们因为有一些开发的背景，所以我们对Vaon 这个区呢，我们认为它是已经在在 Council 里面已经有很多 DA 已经批准的这些批文，也就是说它在未来的几年内，它会在当地会有很多的 Land House Package 被造起来。那么也就是说明会有很多的人从悉尼地区一些不可以承担 afford 的一些 area 去转移到像这样的一些区域，那么它的人口增长是具有潜力的。所以我们拿了这样的一个项目做一个小小的来 testing 一下。你可以看到我们的这个项目非常的简单，它就是一个类似于一个 house 一样的一个房子，我们做的 childcare， 它能够做出来的设计是63个学生，我觉得这个在Sabrina 跟 Arjun 的这个 capacity 范围内应该是很容易就是 fulfill 的一个范围。如果在座的各位有可能性，你们去到 Vaon 或者是 Warnerville， 在那一块你们可以看到很多的 land house package 已经是被 subdivide， 并且很多的学校已经在当地已经完成建设了。那么对于我们选择投资产品的话，从安全的角度而言，我们是希望选在有需求量大的地方的，这是我们选择的考虑的其中的一个因素。另外一个角度呢，因为我刚才提到，就是说悉尼的很多资产主要是土地的价值已经变得非常的昂贵了，所以即使 Sabrina 给我每一个学生的这个收益变得高，它也无法让我产生更好的收益。那我这个所谓的比较是根据公寓房市场的比较，比如说公寓房去掉你们的 council rate， 你们 land tax， 可能你们每年收到的 net 大概是3%左右。那对于我们而言，我们就是想要说有一个安全的产品，但是它能够好于市场上面已有产品的回报，所以我们是在 consider 像幼儿园这样的物业，它所能产生的回报大概是在7%到9%，但是并不是每个地方都可以，因为在悉尼地区的土地价值已经明显变得非常的贵，它所产生的租金回报已经无法达到7%到9%这样的一个回报了，所以我们向一些稍微偏远一点的地方去看，然后做这样的一个尽调，所以这也是我们第一个项目用基金的方式落地这个幼儿园。所以我们大概的几个选项是考量的因素大概是从第一，我们选择的 location， 它当地的这个需求跟供给的关系。第二个呢，我们是综合考虑了关于幼儿园里面内部设施这个 professional 给我们的意见，以及包括我们选择合作方。那么合作方也很重要，因为他们客满，以及他们能够快速的运营，以及他们优质的服务可以带来的客源，就会导致我们会有一个非常稳定的收益。因为如果他们的 business 做得不好，可能过个3-5年，他可能会说我无法去租下去了。那如果一个好的 reputation 的一个 brand 在这样的一个投资项目来看的话，它能够保证这个租金是能够10年、20年、30年，并且每年有3%的 CPI 增长。所以找到这个幼儿园的 location， 你可以看到我们幼儿园的 location 大概是在火车站走路大概在5分钟到10分钟的这个距离范围。那么在这个幼儿园的附近呢，有一些学校，因为综合考虑，有一些家里会有不一样大的孩子，他可能送完小学送中学，或者送完幼儿园送小学，所以这个 location 的选择，我们是也基于考量就是家庭在什么样的家庭考量的因素是什么样的位置更适合以及便于他们去接送孩子，并且旁边的一些 commercial 可能有的时候也适合于等孩子的家长在旁边购物，所以这个是我们选择的这个 location。那么这个 location 的范围周围呢 ，Sabrina 他们也是已经有开设了新的幼儿园，你可以看到这个下面的这个红点是他们目前为止已经在这个范围内已经开设了一个幼儿园，他们的满员率也是非常的快的，所以我们也是基于这样的考量，我们选择一个就近的安全区域。那么他们可能在当地已经有这样的 reputation， 或者他们的 marketing 已经做出去，我相信他们的满员率应该是比较快的。右边你们可能不太能够看得清楚，主要是讲的是就是关于他们的孩子家长对于他们的 service 的一些 comments